Welcome to the L of reflect, love. How can we mirror the radical relationality of Jesus? How might worshiping him deepen our sense of community and connection? Especially in our divisive day, right? In a day of us versus them thinking and all this politicized and ideological warfare, what can we learn about real community by looking at Jesus? Now, to answer that question, we're going to spend just a couple minutes together in John chapter 17, and we're going to draw out three insights for our relational lives. So we'll start at the very end, where Jesus prays and says, "Father, you loved me before the foundation of the world." Think about that. You loved me before the foundation of the world. That means, according to Jesus, before there was ever such a thing as hate, before there was war, before racism, before selfishness, before loneliness, before all of that, there was love. Love is the most ancient and radical thing in existence. Before 1 second of time ever ticked, before a universe sprang into being, there was already community, there was already intimacy, there was already family in the very being of God enjoyed between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now that means your origin and my origin, we don't come from a bunch of impersonal atoms and chemicals bashing into each other. You and I don't trace our origin to some kind of impersonal divine force. You and I trace our origin to a tri-personal God who's always been in relationship. That means you and I are hardwired for connection. We are created for community. Now, you see this at the very beginning of the entire Bible. God makes the universe, and at the end of every day, he speaks a benediction. He says, it's good, it's good, it's good. Until you get to the first malediction in the Bible, the first bad word, God looks into his universe and says, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for man to be alone. Why? Again, because we're created for community by a God who is and who always has been community. Now, I think you already knew that. Think about it. Why do prisons punish with solitary confinement? Why is the hole considered such a harsh punishment? Because we're created for community. Why is love the number one theme in the history of rock and roll, the history of poetry, the history of literature, the history of movies? Because we're created for community. Maybe some of you are introverts and you need a little downtime, a little solo time to recoup. So you know that some alone time can be a good thing, but you've also probably learned that too much alone time and you start to get weird, right? You start to fall apart. You start to fray at the edges. Why? Again, we're created for community by a God who is community. So there's a first insight from John 17. Number two, Jesus says, "Father, you loved them even as you loved me." Now, Jesus here is talking about anybody who trusts him. Anybody who trusts him, according to Jesus, is loved by the Father even as the Father loves the Son. Well, how does the Father love the Son? The Father loves the Son infinitely. The Father loves the Son unapologetically, irreversibly, with the full weight of his divine perfections. So if you follow the logic of Jesus, how are you loved? You are loved infinitely. You are loved irreversibly. You are loved unapologetically and with the full weight of the divine perfections. Now, you could spend your whole life backpacking Europe and scaling the Himalayas and sitting in lotus position and chanting Om and, putting yourself out there on online dating sites, looking for love and looking to find your true self. And you will never find a more profound answer to the question, who am I? Than what Jesus has just said in John 17. You are loved even as the Father loves the Son. Now, when that clicks, it frees you up in all of your other relationships, because now I don't need to love others insecurely to become loved. I can love others securely because I'm already so radically loved by the triune God. That leads to a third and final insight from John 17. Jesus says, "Father, may they be one as we are one." Jesus is asking the Father to add a depth and authenticity to our relationships. Now, the premise of that prayer, Jesus asking for us to be more loving, is that the Father is actually big and sovereign enough to answer that prayer. God can cause us to love in ways that don't come natural to us. Left to ourselves, we can easily become self-delusional. We can easily become selfish jerks. We can easily become hostile and suspicious and bitter and resentful and unforgiving and tribal. And so Jesus asked the Father to cause us to love. There's such thing as a supernaturally generated love that comes from the Father. Now that's what's missing in this cultural moment is you have all kinds of movements pitted against each other, clamoring for more love and for more justice. And they tend to rely on their own power, and we often become self-righteous jerks when we rely on ourselves. And so we need, right now in the 21st century, that John 17 reminder that God the Father can cause us to love supernaturally in ways that left to ourselves will only be filled up with self-righteousness. So there you have 3 insights from John 17 into our relational lives. Now in the chapter of Reflect, I get into quite a few more insights, and I hope you dig into that material. And my prayer for you is that as you do, you find yourself becoming more truly yourself as you seek to mirror the radical relationality of Jesus.